Do it.
Wait, you have a view?
Thought about the golf cart, but it was.
All right, good morning. Welcome to our town hall meeting for Saturday. is it August 1st?
August 1st.
August 1st. Bright and early on a rainy day. We'll probably have a lot more online viewers than in-person participants, but happy to get started. And if you're not here in person, you're missing the donuts and chicken biscuits. And there's a lot today. So let's get started. Who wants to go first? There's only, if you're here, you got to talk. Tim's like, oh, me? Must I?
Tim Fontaine, for those who don't know me. You know, we left the last meeting with stories, and one of the questions was, what taxing district is the paper mill in? So I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Make sure his timer started, please.
In April the 10th, 1930, the Panama City Commission
Nevin was probably there.
had called a special meeting at 8 o'clock. And the meeting was to discuss a plan with Minor Keys chief counsel for the city to buy the property at Bay Harbor and lease that property to the paper company to build a mill there.
Wow.
So they agreed, we're going to buy the property and we're going to let the mill build. So the next regular scheduled city commission meeting was the next day on the 11th. The next day, they held a meeting, and what they voted on in that meeting was to allow the paper company to immediately start building on the property, even though the city didn't own the land. So it went for another, and the most amazing thing about everything about that is within 10 months, the paper mill was making paper on that property.
Wow.
But back to the present time. So after the hurricane,
That's your kind of action.
Might have no building permits either. Just like, that looks right.
Yep.
after the hurricane, there's a lot more stories that happened during
I'm
that
sure.
year with the city commission. Maybe I'll dig them up for the next meeting when there's only 2 people here. After the hurricane, I was already retired, and I got a call from our comptroller at the mill, and he says, Tim said, we've got a tax assessment for this year, and it's gone up $150 million in value. He said, and really all we did was spend the money to take the mill back to where it was prior to the hurricane and start operating again. He said, can you help us? I said, well, I'll see what I can do. So we got with somebody, they got with somebody, and anyway, to make a long story short, I can't believe I did this in 3 minutes. The county did agree to roll it back to pre-2018 or 2018 for the storm. And so that's, Jonathan, to answer your question last time, that as far as I know, unless it's changed, it's in the county.
It's in the county.
That's all I have for now.
So, Tim, you have the whistle, correct?
Yes, sir. Once it was announced, it's amazing how April the 22nd, when West Rock announced that they were going to shut the mill down. And after I got over the hurt, I said, and I was part of the Historical Society. I said, just recently, like 2019. So I said, what can I get out of a mill that has something that the community would recognize?
Yeah.
And I made an effort, and I didn't get very far with the mill manager that was there, so I went around and found governmental affairs, and a letter came down to him from corporate that said, please get the mill to Tim Fontaine.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it before, I'd love to see us either in using Millville CRA, and we could tone it down some, it doesn't have to be full blast, but putting the whistle back in one of our parks as like a symbol of what it used to be, then have it still blow at the certain times. That's got to be feasible.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it? And you celebrate, you put a plaque on it. And
It would take a lot of, like I said, it was powered by 150 PSI steam, wide open through a 3-inch pipe.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit of steam. And in the museum, I've got the video that I after it was announced, I climbed up on a stack and took a video of the mill whistle blowing and procured some of the
Yeah.
electronics from the mill to
Yeah.
amplify it in the museum. In fact, whenever, after a lightning storm, it will start blowing on its own, and Mark Hurst will come over there and just unplug everything because he doesn't know how to turn it off.
Yeah, and Tim and I went back and forth on text one day. There's a few people that still redo those old steam whistles. It's a very old craft that, it's kind of a lost art. But there's got to be a way to do it, whether it's even symbolic, you put a whistle inside of it or something. It'd be nice to have the original sound still, but I think that'd be, and maybe there's a little,
Well,
some little celebration of the mill.
Creighton does have a boiler and
Yeah.
produce steam.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're willing to sacrifice their
Yeah.
steam to.
We might have to mount it on top of City Hall. I don't know, we've got a huge boiler here.
Really? Yeah, I
One-
think there's a
well-
way to retrofit it. But I'd love to see us take on that project and wherever is the appropriate place.
Or-
The waterfront park or something would be cool.
Put it in Sweet Bay.
Yeah, right by Brian's house.
Exactly. Right on top. Right on top of University Academy. No, I think very similarly how Ford put speakers on the Mustangs to make them sound louder. I think we probably could do something similar because when that thing blows, I mean, it's so loud.
It is, yeah.
So if we wanted to memorialize it, I think we probably have to do it through a speaker rather than actually blowing the whistle.
Yeah, you can even, there's one that's just air.
You can't have the whistle go off quietly. Like it it has,
Doesn't have the same
so much
effect.
pressure to get it to sound off, and once it sounds off, it's loud.
I have the old Bay High school bell for the class changes from the gym.
that one.
And it's wired up now. I can plug it in. The problem is it's so loud. If you were to ring it at history class, you would startle people. Beer would be flying everywhere. And so we're looking at ways to make it not so loud.
Well, you need to blow it at 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, totally. I want to do like and maybe it's this, there's a number of ways we do it, but I love those sort of celebrations of the old, so I'd love to keep that conversation going.
There you go. We can put it on top of history class
Yeah, no, you're right by my house.
instead of the bell that they ring for good tips. They can just pull the cable, and
Yeah, just let it rip at
everybody
like
everybody
9:45.
in Bay County will know that those are tips.
Yes, they will.
I love it. Anything else? You want to talk today? I mean, we're running, the
Hey.
list is short.
Tell a story.
Hopefully someone texts me some topics.
It could be a tornado
You
warning
could
system.
tell a story
It could
about
be.
how you witnessed security when I
I
came
know
in.
they did that whenever,
They treated everybody the same.
yeah. Tim can confirm that whenever there were like certain emergencies, y'all would sound it as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Like, was it 3 blast?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I like the
There you
tornado
go.
warning system.
Hey.
2 blasts for the all
Yeah.
clear.
Oh yeah, when I was living in St. Louis for college one year, I had no idea what a tornado sounds like. What is that whistle noise, that siren in the middle of the night? Virgil, let's talk about one of the things that you and I met about, which was the cemetery board and standing up that cemetery board. Because Virgil and I met 2 weeks ago and discussed that, and I didn't even realize we had an existing board.
You do. All you got to do is appoint.
Yeah.
We still have people appointed to it.
Yeah,
They're
I would love to see that
People
board.
that
dead.
are still alive.
Yeah.
There are still people that are alive on it?
I don't know.
I
No.
don't think so.
No.
Let me clarify
that.
The
But,
entire cemetery board is dead.
Literally. But yeah, my point was with that board is it needs to be an active group of people who are caretaking the physical land of it, looking to improve it, fundraising for it, helping us set aside money for the fund of it, and not just a board of pageantry, but a board of people who actually
A working board.
a working board. It takes, and I'm starting to see that for me, even the event permit committee, Jonathan and I talked about, like, why do we need a committee? And I'm like, because whenever we do something here, I have to send it out to a dozen people going, what do you think? And then they give me feedback, and then I bring it to Jonathan, and they have to track to see. It's so much easier if I just said, are they happy? Because if they're happy, I'm happy. It's just easier to one less thing to go gather feedback on and track it and make sure it's inputted correctly and brought back and all those things. So.
And plus, that process allows others that we may not be aware of, who's concerned about it, a venue for them to get connected, to express their concerns.
Yep. So I'd love to see them, but you're welcome.
Well, Virgil, Marshall,
Gator fan?
Ever
Good
si-
taste.
Ever since I played for the Oakland Terrace Gators in '76, I've been a Gator fan. So I'm a lifelong. Yes, with Artie. So, cemeteries, you know, as you know, last month I talked about that too, and I reached out to Brian to ask a question. Commissioner Lucas had actually sent out something last year about wanting to have me on the cemetery board, and in preparation for this meeting, I actually did some homework. Looking at state statutes and different things like that. So yes, I would like to be on that board. My question is, do we have any space available within the city's cemeteries or within that to actually lay somebody to rest?
So I asked that question when I was looking to stand up the cemetery board, and the answer I got was it's very, very limited. Yes, we do, but it's going by pretty quick. So I was looking at it in the context of how many spaces do we have left, so that to determine if we could if we could do the fee, if the fee could help build a fund.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not feasible because there's so few spaces left. I don't know how many we have left, but I mean it was not many.
Yeah.
So, but yes, we can still bury people.
Okay. Well, you know, like I said last month, there's a proposal on the table to give 18.2 acres. We don't know how much of that's usable, but at least that's some space, and it's already adjacent to Greenwood Cemetery. And so that's would get us a process so we can lay people to rest. And it's simply because the history of Hillside is 77 years old, and it takes, 77 people die every day, so every year you're getting spots and stuff like that. And I think that proposal, which is right next to Greenwood, take the fence down, extend it, and make it one, and anybody that wants to do that, can have a place reasonable to have a traditional type funeral, stuff like that. And Hillside is in a position that we can run it, even though we're just mandated by the state. I can't find why they mandated us running it, and we don't do it for profit. We do it because there was an issue in previous government that caused some issues and so forth. The state came in and said, hey, the city, is not going to run that cemetery. The community is going to run that. And in my research and talking with Mrs. Morris up with the Department of Cemeteries in Tallahassee, we're doing some research because that department did not exist back then. It was actually the Department of Insurance. And so going through archival documents, it's going to take some time to research that. But I am looking into it, and hopefully we can resolve the issue so we can lay people to rest.
Was Redwood Cemetery also a part of that determination about community organizations running certain cemeteries? Because Redwood is run by a committee as well, and they have the same issues of space. In fact, I think I showed you, Jonathan, there's a parcel owned by someone else at Redwood that if we were to offer them to swap one of the other lots, that would help Redwood
Expand it, right.
get more space. And then Virgil has brought us the opportunity to expand both Hillside and Greenwood potentially with this donation of land.
Yeah, and I believe Mr. Zimmerman's team, Ms. McSwain, is already working on some of that paperwork with the attorneys at Royal American. I don't know where it is in the process, but we can get an update. I know that she's already engaged on that, though.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you see how much research he's already done
Yeah.
that our staff doesn't have to do. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
anywhere people.
No,
that
I
wanna
just mean the
give
legal
back.
paperwork.
No, I'm saying in general, you
Yeah.
can hear he's calling people.
Yeah.
That board could get a lot more done than we could because we just this organization's so busy doing all the things.
So one of the things that I was trying to solve for was the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance, because obviously we live in Florida, so grass will grow, 8 months out of the year.
On a day like today, it's growing at record speed.
Yeah, exactly. So, and labor is very expensive to get out there and mow, keep it knocked down, to keep our cemeteries looking presentable and nice. There's a company out there that does robo mowers, and they have a program specifically for cemeteries. And these little robo mowers will go out and cut at all hours. And even right now, while it's raining, they'll go out and they'll cut. And so really what it does is it kind of offsets your maintenance to where you just have to have somebody with a weed eater go in and just handle that, because the majority of the grass stays knocked down because of these robo mowers. So far as cost savings, according to the company, it would save us anywhere from 20 to 30% of labor costs. So, I mean, there's still an expense. It's usually on the front end, but the idea is that if we were to implement something like this, and I would suggest we would implement it as a test in one of our cemeteries, and then, see how that goes. But that's just one way to potentially keep our cemeteries looking nice, but without having the labor expense. And also, like, we've had a lot of rain here recently, right? And so people won't get out on a lawnmower and go, like, after today, if you're on a riding lawnmower, you're gonna have to wait like a day or two because you're gonna sink, right? Those
It'll
robo
blow your blade too.
Yeah, and those robo mowers won't sink. They won't sink, so they can literally mow while it's raining. So,
You know who used to take care of cemeteries?
The military.
For military people, but the vast majority were taken care of by churches. Like, government didn't start taking care of cemeteries until 40s, 30s,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. So,
Yeah, in fact, many of the older cemeteries were land adjacent to and owned by churches.
Yeah, that's something like the board could figure out if we have an active cemetery board. Robo mowers.
robo mowers.
Saw one of those in Fayetteville mowing a yard.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
What I liked about the specific company that I had found is that it's just contracted out. They take care of all the maintenance of the robo mowers. They take care of the sharpening.
All right, who wants to go next? Do we have any topics we want to discuss?
I got an email message from some community members over near our maintenance yard concerned about the expansion of that facility, moving everything from St. Andrews over to the site in Glenwood. And so just want to kind of talk about what that plan is and how we are communicating that with the neighbors.
I'm sure I can speak to it. That maintenance yard I think it's been there for 70, 75 years. Prior to my time coming back, they purchased additional land to the west, to the west up against Harmon Avenue, for the plan to build a brand-new vehicle maintenance facility over there. That ended up getting close to $4 million, I think. I know Commissioner Street probably the only one that was really involved in the discussions around that. And instead, we decided to
fix the one we have.
remodel it just around $1 million, just fix the one we had. And there was.
I think we designed it though, didn't we?
Yeah, it's fully designed.
Yeah, we
It
got
is, yeah, it's
through
fully
the
designed.
whole process.
But just, there just wasn't the money for it. And so we instead had fixed that one up. Parks and Rec used to be there in a very limited capacity. But they moved over to, over near Elm Avenue for a season, but long-term, that wasn't really an option, because that's housing property and it needed to be, it couldn't be utilized for city operations. And so that's, their kind of PCR is coming back to there. But, the land has been expanded around there, and we are entertaining. From an efficiency standpoint, Sean, Mr. Self would like to combine this into one warehouse to, again, just be more efficient, less buildings, less operations. To say that they're already moving utilities and all that over there that's not an accurate statement. They are looking at the feasibility. It is tight, but Mr. Self and, Mr. Daughtery are kind of working through that and see how that might work. They are working potentially on a plan. Of course, the selling of the property would require the commission's approval, but Sean does believe with some additional efforts that we could combine all of those maintenance operations in more of the central part of the city, right there near kind of in between downtown and Glenwood. And then potentially, if the commission so desires, sell the property at 19th and Beck.
So that was the question that
Yeah.
was raised. Why come to the Glenwood site versus going to the 19th Street site?
Oh, just Glenwood, I think is probably double, if not triple the size. Yeah.
Okay.
9 acres.
And it's got a lot more buildings around it.
10
and
acres.
What now?
It's just about 10 acres.
10 acres. And so, plus, again, we have the land all the way back up at Harmon Avenue, and I mean, I don't see us doing any kind of building of that. But again, it's just I think providing better inventory control, kind of consolidating the warehouse operations for efficiency's sake. And this is something that Mr. Self did for over 20 years out west for the, with the not Beta schools, with the school district out west. And so.
So,
it's-
yeah, the concern was that the increased truck traffic and noise was going to be even more disruptive than what's already going on there in the neighborhood. Is there a way to accommodate maybe a different entrance? 'Cause
That's
right
what I was
now-
about to say, an entrance on 7th Street.
Yes,
Might we
right
do
now
that?
the entrance comes straight through residential.
Yeah, and we talked about that
versus
yesterday in our weekly meeting, and I've already got an email drafted for Mr. Self and Mr. Murphy to maybe work through that and see what, if they could kind of punch a hole and build another entrance over there. In fact, even potentially move it all over there.
I would encourage you guys, if you guys haven't gone by the 19th and Beckland, we still have a building that has a caved-in front to it over there.
Is that the one that's in the back
Yeah,
center?
to the back, so.
Direct hit by a
if-
tornado.
Yeah, if we do intend to stay at 19th, like, there's gotta be some pretty significant investments to continue to operate there, because that building is, I mean, literally the front of it's crushed in, so.
And I'll just add, I'm totally sensitive to the increase in traffic, but really, my goodness, almost all of our utility vehicles, with the exception of the one vac truck, are all like regular, like, size trucks. They're not, it's, the big garbage trucks and dump trucks, those are already at Masalina. So we're not talking about bringing giant, more, we're not adding 10 more dump trucks, we're not adding more garbage trucks. Again, I think every utility vehicle, with the exception of the one vac truck, is just a regular size, like F-150 or maybe an F-250 at the very biggest.
Maybe 20 vehicles, I think, is over there, stationed, something
Yeah,
like that.
in Mr. Self's opinion,
Yeah.
Again, the staff could handle the transfer internally, but, if he decided to sell the property, that would obviously require commission approval. But he feels pretty strongly about it. And again, they're still working through some of the logistics, and the entrance would be one thing for sure.
That would be the place to put it.
But you could, there's a lot of things that don't need a building. We could put pole barns up and keep things out of the rain and the sun, but don't necessarily have to be completely inside or climate controlled to that end, so.
And then the buffering.
Right. Well, we talked about some options with the fencing around that, but not only that, I mean, it would, would potentially could put that large piece of parcel back on the tax roll, reduce our insurance, reduce our operating expenses, and just make the warehouse operations better oversight, more efficient all around.
So what about if we sold 19th Street, and I don't even know how big it is or how much it's worth, devoting a percentage of that sale to improving this facility for the neighborhood, moving, I think a natural place to put an entrance and exit would be on Allen Avenue, because then you have a cross street. And
Allen?
yeah, Allen Avenue. Right by the rescue mission, that's Allen Avenue. That's Allen Avenue.
Named after the mayor.
Yeah, A-L-E-N.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
well,
only been,
it's,
I know.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
It was
you
named
got a
before I was born.
massive, that's a massive, that's where all the rainwater goes on the.
Yeah,
north side.
it's low here, but not so much here. But anyways, an entrance on 7th Street and buffering for sound in the neighborhood, probably around this back corner. Even looking at lights, maybe a plan for lights where they're down lights versus floodlights.
having a few cut off, and just improving the overall lighting situation where it's not lit up all the time, all those kind
So
of
you're,
things.
you're suggesting using the proceeds of the sale to fund some capital expenditure on the other location?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see an issue with that.
Yeah.
I would encourage us to look at all of our facilities and say, how can we be, better neighbors with those that are around it? We've got a gateway overlay, we have some of our own facilities aren't even in compliance with what we set as standards for the gateway. So it would be good, I think, to look at all of them, how we create, buffering, beautification, that kind of stuff. It's about 5 acres, so I just pulled it up.
So it is half.
So,
Do we have a fence somewhere that's maybe grandfathered in or something, Commissioner? What, can you be specific?
But St. Andrews wastewater treatment plant, that one is just a chain link with,
Right.
with
On the,
barbed wire.
yeah.
So that was one, no landscaping, that kind of stuff. I think there's probably, and I would say even with this one that's over off Seventh is, fencing, privacy fencing, landscaping, it can make a municipal facility feel a lot better than just a lay-down yard.
Yeah,
You know?
and lighting,
Yeah.
while there's a massive concrete entrance, it's not aesthetically pleasing at all, so.
Yeah, moving that entrance, it is in the neighborhood.
Yes,
And
it
moving to
is.
7th would be, first, one less turn to make for the cars, but definitely wouldn't have trucks driving past you. Or, I'm looking at the overview, a couple hundred cars a day would be removed from the neighborhood. So that would put more traffic on 7th Street, which is where it should be versus on I guess that'd be Masalina, or is that Harmon? Masalina, probably. So, yeah, good stuff. When will we hear back on any stuff related to 19th Street? And the potential sale of it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like I
Is that
said, this, I think.
2 month, 1 month?
Yeah, so I think.
2 years?
I would imagine by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
I think what's happening right now is PCR is moving back, and people are conflating that incorrectly with utilities.
Yeah.
That's a much heavier lift and requires a lot more coordination, and plus, Mr. Self is now back over the vehicle and equipment maintenance. And so he's working on that aspect as well. So I think there's some other things to get in order at the Masalina complex, including, again, PCR coming back before we start moving forward on that. So-
Where's Public Works?
So Public Works right now is at both of them. So Public Works includes streets and drainage, solid waste, and utilities. Parks and Rec, as well as the streets and drainage component and equipment maintenance, facility maintenance, and all the solid waste folks are there at Masalina, and then just utilities are over at Beck, so.
So some Public Works is coming back to the Masalina complex, even though the majority of it is already there.
Correct. I don't
Okay.
know that it's accurate to say it's coming back. 'Cause I
Or
don't-
coming to.
Yeah, I don't know if utilities used to be a separate department, and under Mr. McQueen, which a lot of cities and counties are doing, they're kind of bringing the utilities operation and then the more kind of the streets and drainage operation under one team. It just creates better synergy and requires the folks to work, and it also reduces the number of directors. And so, it used to be utilities was its own department, and so I think they've probably been over there, since at least the 80s, as far as I can remember, they've kind of been separate.
Since we're discussing that, what is the plan for the parcel that's next to the Millville wastewater treatment plant? There's a large 3.5 acre parcel that's there. I'm assuming the city purchased it for something.
Is that the old Tico?
Yeah,
property?
we've
Yeah, I
talked
think
about
so.
a bike village, another park, pickleball, tennis. We talked about it at one of the last virtual workshops when CRA did the presentation. We could potentially do some limited parking over there.
Waterfront pickleball courts?
Well, I don't know that I would quite, that's more like kind of around the corner, but yeah, so, but it's kind of, if you've ever been up in it, it's kind of divided, like there's like a wall, and so their elevation is pretty
Yeah, I see
significant. may change, but I think the jury is still out on that. That's something that we'll collaboratively have to kind of figure out, but there's no immediate plans for that.
Well, first, before I talk about the Millville treatment plant, fun fact, I got my start as a trash picker-upper around the city yard. My grandmother used to pay me because there was a parking lot on Masalina that's outside the city yard that the city employees would park on, and they would leave trash on the ground. It would blow into her yard, which is at Masalina and 7th. And so she would pay me like $3 to pick up all the trash on the block, including the city's parking lot. So that's just how I got my start. But so that was the story. But anyways,
I don't know, your rates went from 3 to
I know,
0.
I'm gonna keep getting worse. And that was the 80s, child labor. But the wastewater treatment plant in Millville, Dr. Jessica Graham of the St. Joseph St. Andrew Bay Estuary Program said if she had one magic wish, if she had a genie, that she would wish that treatment plant to go away. She said that's the number one thing that she would love to see us change, as general as that particular thing.
Yeah, the one out over the water? Yeah. Yeah, we were certainly blessed that Hurricane Michael did not damage or destroy that plant.
Yes.
Yeah, if we had $250 million, we could build a new one. So Mott is kind of at the wrapping up stage. I need to kind of figure out where they are on that. Remember, we got a grant from the state, from the DEP, to do a feasibility study on kind of what are some of the different options. Part of the challenge is we're still required to to make repairs and to address the issue. So it's almost like we're kind of hardening / repairing it as we go. But again, we have to because of consent orders. But there's options trying to shift some of it over, some of the flow over to Military Point, some of it which they have limited capacity. Moving some of it over to St. Andrews, which has the ability to expand capacity. We have the ability to, look at building some down front. And we're working on that, as you all know, in our conversations with some of the developers, kind of carving out pieces of property, looking for opportunities to partner. With that. But, in the short term, you've got, almost half the Panama City proper goes there, so.
Have we made any progress on the staging site? What did you call it? Transfer site. The transfer site for.
I know they've had 1 or 2 meetings with the county and with the engineering firm that was hired to do it. I believe I actually saw something on the calendar this week for another meeting, but they've kicked off the effort, so.
Cool.
Is there still opportunity?
Come on now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Well, keep me out of my bed before 8 o'clock.
Early to bed, early to rise.
No.
Makes a young woman healthy.
Well, I'm gonna be
wise.
young till I'm 120, so that's neither here nor there. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good
Brenda
morning.
Lewis
Morning,
Williams,
morning.
2748 Oak Hammock Drive. I received a text from a young lady, and I shall let her remain nameless because she asked me to. She lives by the city complex on 7th and Masalina, and they've heard terrible news, similar to what you were talking about a minute ago, about underground utilities, lift stations, and their operations moving over to the Masalina complex. And if this is done, then there will be a tremendous traffic problem, and I would dare say a noise problem as well, in addition to some pollution. She believes this is a wrong move and that all the construction traffic from that neighborhood that is mostly white to a neighborhood that is mostly black. Speaking of moving it from 19th Street to Masalina. In addition, I'm going to add this. The one on 19th Street is in a commercial district. Masalina is not a commercial district. So you've already moved some of it over there, and the traffic is unbearable. And we just cannot imagine having underground utilities and lift stations and other warehouse in our neighborhood causing more traffic and noise than we already have. Why doesn't the city ask us about these decisions? Apparently you have not, and that directly affect us. This is sickening how they do us.
You can probably, there's somebody, and I know who to call. There's several points here. There's the, at the plant on 19th Street, it's in close proximity, they can respond quickly. Masalina, they cannot. That's a small street over there. I know several persons who inhabit that street. And again, because it is a commercial area on 19th Street, the citizens in that area do not want any more activity. My suggestion is move 7th Street to 19th Street, unless there's some other plans. And the way my mind works, because there's a lot of projects, pet projects in the works, because the mayor's already campaigning for his next election with his post of yesterday. And one of his pet projects is the Boys and Girls Club, so I don't know if you want to put the Boys and Girls Club over there. I probably gave you an idea, but that's what hit my mind. But nonetheless, to be utilized over there. These people, these citizens do not want that over there. Now, I'm being their spokesperson this morning because they sent it to me. They do not want it there. So you need to readjust your thinking and pay attention to what the citizens are requesting. Thank you.
Thank you. You just missed the conversation.
Yeah.
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 We just had like 15, 20 minutes of.
I know I missed
yeah.
the conversation.
No big deal.
Yeah.
I didn't get up till 8:04.
That's okay.
I mean, I'll echo, I mean, no decision's been made.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's spreading rumors.
Yeah, and in fact, when I got the email, I had not even heard. So it wasn't something that we had discussed. It was the city exploring options.
It's, first off, what's coming back there right now is Parks and Rec is returning to that location where they were for many, many years. Mr. Self has, again, expressed, hey, I think we could potentially consolidate into one facility, make the warehouse operation more efficient, save citizens money, reduce insurance expense, reduce wear and tear on buildings. Plus, the Masalina lot is double the size. It's 10 acres versus, I think we said a little under 5 acres over at 19th and Beck. So, I honestly have no idea what all that is zoned. I mean, both have been city yards for 60, 70 years. The zoning, I'm not picking and choosing stuff because of the zoning. The yards are what they are. And I know that we purchased additional parcels, again, before I moved back home 5 years ago. They purchased lots more to the west, all the way over to Harmon Avenue with the plans to expand that. And that's been in the works now 7 or 8 years, I think.
Yeah, and I would add too, it's really interesting to be looked at like this is something nefarious when my family owns property across the street from the city yard and has since the 40s, and my grandmother's house is on that corner. And if I thought it was detrimental, like some new terrible detrimental thing, I would be the one of the people affected by it because we're the largest landowner within probably half a mile besides the hospital. So I would be negatively affected by it, right? But this is an existing, who was surprised by it would have been my grandparents because they bought there in the 40s. The yard came in the 60s.
Does anyone live in that house now, though?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, my dad has employees that will live in that house.
Yeah, and I would also add that that census tract that we're talking about right now, it's 47% minority. So, like, St. Andrews is still a very diverse group of people that are over there. So I don't think it's about shifting anything like that. And this wasn't something, I came up with this with staff looking at ways to save money. And we've got to make a major investment into the yard on 19th if we're going to remain to be there because we have damaged facilities. So I don't think that there's anything nefarious. Is there poor communication? Absolutely.
Well,
It doesn't have to be
about it.
nefarious.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just historically that those kind of decisions have been driven for reasons other than what you are suggesting now. And so for people who live in the neighborhood and live in the community, there is the sense, as has been expressed, that the decisions are made about a community, for
Racially
a community,
based.
without input from that community as to how it will be affected. And so, again, going
You
from.
have meetings on Sweetwater, what they're going to do. You need to speak to the folks there and that live in Masalina and see how they feel about this and get their input because this is where they live. your grandparents being aside, as a matter of fact, you answered somebody about your grandparents, and that, to me, that was not an acceptable answer. But you need to set up a meeting with the people in the community and see what will work best. And I say keep 19th Street, load 7th over there to 19th Street. Granted, it may be smaller, but it's still doable, because you have a whole bunch of equipment over there that is outdated and needs to go to the probably out to the Steelfield landfill, or to whatever the graveyard you might want to call it. I've been over there, so I know what it looks like. I'm not speaking off the top of my head. So you need to redress what you're going to do. Granted, you said it's not out there yet, but before it gets worse, you need to redress it and see what your community wants. That's what you're here for.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, just the timeline, we discussed this briefly, like probably months ago. And so this wasn't something that, this is staff exploring options that we had discussed. And then, so when I got the email, my first reply was like, the one on 7th Street? It was news to me, right? So this wasn't some like behind the scenes, it was staff taking action of things we had discussed, bringing back solutions that we're to probably discuss later. So it was also a surprise.
I'm not saying that it is. What I'm bringing to you is a citizen concern.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to address.
Right. Well, and I'll just say this, Ms. Lewis, I hope your response was, well, I know Jonathan Hayes is the city manager.
I haven't responded
Please let me
yet.
finish.
Okay.
And I've known his family for 30 years, and I can assure you he would never be a part of a decision based on race or trying to negatively impact this community. I hope you said that, ma'am.
I will.
Okay,
I haven't
thank you.
responded yet, because I
Okay.
just received this.
Also adding he was a great student and always did
No,
his
I was
homework.
not a great student.
No, he's come a long way since he was a student, but a very long way. No,
You know there's not a racist bone in my body, and so I would appreciate you pushing back on that in the community.
I will.
Because that does offend me, because that is offensive. I do not tolerate that stuff, and my family has served all races and all types of society for decades.
I know
okay?
that. I know that.
But you need to reassure people
I
that we
will
have the leadership
reassure
of the
folks,
city.
but the community
is not like
doesn't
that.
know that. And it's not just you, it's everyone that sits here. They're looking at you, somebody's missing, but they're
Mr.
looking.
Hughes is missing.
They're looking at you to do what is acceptable and right for their community, as is done for some other communities. And you all know the first thing that happens when it involves an African American community and Caucasian decisions, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to call discrimination. So do those things that afford you the ability to let it be known that it is not discrimination, okay? That's all you need to do. Meet with the community, see what their needs are, see what their wants are. And although this has been discussed between staff and this, all of you, you've not taken it to community. This is where things get sideways and railroaded, because they're up there in those ivory towers making all these decisions, and they're not asking us what we want or what our desires are. That's all I'm saying. Talk to the community, and I'll address your issue. I will.
Thank you,
Okay?
ma'am.
You're most welcome. May I see you? Well, I gotta go.
Who else wants to talk? Derek, you want to say something today?
I got a funeral to go to.
All right, let's do it.
Morning.
Good morning.
So, Mr. Mayor, you and I have already brought this to your attention. I'm concerned about the code enforcement and the day fines. And at the last meeting, I know what Commissioner One thinks about it, but I didn't hear from any of the rest of you. What I brought up to his attention is that in just one day, you'd had one case where a person was dead for 3 years and gets stuck with $500,000 day fines. And the total cost of abatement and court fees is like $511, but $502,000 of it is day fines. And there's two other cases, and I told you the wrong one. I think it's the CE 250667 case. And that was the other one that was over 200. So you had two cases over 200, one over 500, and the second case was 72,000 for a $2,000 abatement. So you have, what you're listing, you voted on in 6E was to have less than $100,000 being added to people's tax bills. But just in this one day, that's 10 times the amount of money in just day fines that are added to people's tax bills at the same time. But you're not disclosing that to the public, and you're not discussing it because you're not disclosing it. So I think that the only way to really address it and fix it is if you pass a rule saying that you can't exceed a certain amount of money in day fines. Because if, like the third case, the owner invests $40,000 to fix the problem and then gets hit with $33,000 worth of day fines. So all the money they invested in it is wiped out, and they might as well walk away from it. And the only way that the person on 22nd Street with the $500,000 fine is going to be able to sell that, and it could be fixed up and put back into the market, which currently the people that are living there renting it, I don't know who they're paying if the guy's dead, but that's going to be just permanently shuttered, and nobody's going to live there because nobody's going to pay $500,000 for a house that was built in the 60s that's less than 2,000 square feet that needs work. So they're just not going to do it. So the city manager will have to forgive the $500,000 in day fines. And that can't be the only way to address it, because then you have developers walking in and getting land and not paying what everybody else would have to pay. And if the family members of this person who's been dead for 3 years ever find out that there's a potential inheritance, it's going to be when they're tracked down by the city that says, we want $500,000, you're the next of kin, why don't you pay for their property? So, you have to, I don't know where you want to start with that conversation, but you should have a conversation about what is an appropriate level of fines.
Yeah.
And how do we address the fact that if it goes above a certain level, the only way that you can get it back into the market is if the city manager goes off the record with no accountability, which is not going to make the people that are upset about code enforcement go into, and the other thing I wanted to mention, like Calhoun at the north side of that.
Let's do two talk. Let's talk about code enforcement first. We'll come back to your.
Okay, well, that is part of the same code enforcement. That in just this one thing, more than 10% of the cases were just in a little tiny area, which apparently a developer wants to build in, because you're gonna put a multi-purpose lane right near it. At the end of Calhoun, there's a nice ramp that goes out onto the beach. None of it along Beach Drive. None of them apparently you're planning on putting those nice ramps that take the people out onto the beach.
Calhoun.
Calhoun.
Because that's the first. Oh, okay. That is there's a nice waterfront access there.
Sparkle Park.
Sparkle Park. What a
That's
cute
what
name.
it's called in the neighborhood.
So talk about the day fines, but
Totally.
and the reason people are getting upset is because you see certain areas getting a lot of attention, and usually where the city's finally putting money in there, like Joe Moody Harris Park, and then you find out what's going on, and it's the day fines that are literally taking the property away. Even if you spend over $40,000 to try to fix it up, you lose it anyway.
So what's interesting about this job is, Ms. Lewis Williams said that we live in an ivory tower, and oftentimes I find myself trying to tell a story that illustrates that we are also citizens too. And we also experience this organization as citizens and elected officials. And one of my stories related to code enforcement that I think aligns the same frustration that Derek has felt is right before I started campaigning, I got a letter that was like, you've got a code enforcement hearing coming up on a piece of property. It was over here on 6th Street. And I was like, I had not received any communication. I had owned the property for like 4 years, and I had been accruing fines for 4 years. It didn't come back in title search. And I had no idea I had constructed stuff on it. I thought the case was closed years before, and I had not gotten a single email or anything. And, I'm a known person in this town. I have a lot of projects. This is before I was mayor. And I went for the magistrate, and I was like, dude, this is active projects here, and I didn't even know about it. And they're like, no big deal. And even for me, I could overcome a $65,000 fine. But for other people, that's a $500 fine would wreck their life, right? And so for me, I was like, oh, I know everyone. I know the magistrate. I know those people. It didn't rock my world. It was almost comical. But for other people who don't have those connections, that situation is terrifying, even if it's a $200 fine. And so, I think Derek's bringing up good questions, and I have not dug personally into code enforcement, knowing best practices, but it is a department that can really feel scary to someone who is dealing with it for the first. I mean, we had a lady here on Harrison Avenue, very mad. She's working on her piece of property, hoping to open a pet salon, and she's confused. But she thought Jonathan could waive her fines, or I could, and they just don't know the system that we have of government, and no one's really in charge. I mean, Jonathan has authority. We have authority cumulatively together, and I don't know how to fix code enforcement, but I know Fuller's. He's doing like 12 jobs right now. I would love to see us either bring someone in, and I know they go to compliance conferences, but I'd love to see someone come in just looking at all the ways we can communicate, all our fine schedules. Is there a better? I feel so disconnected from being able to say, I know we've done our due diligence with that department to know they're doing the best work, right? I know they have good hearts, but I can't say it because I haven't researched the best work, and I haven't seen us push them to prove that they're doing their best work either. That's what I'd like to see, is some sort of way that we can go as elected officials and say, Derek, I know for a fact that we're doing the best thing and we're doing the right thing with that department, those fines. But I can't even say that.
Who's levying the fines? Is that
Yeah.
City of Panama City, or is that
It's
the
a
court?
it's a magistrate judge, the court,
But
driven by state statute.
they're enforcing what the people bring in front of them. So the magistrate didn't know until the case was over and he'd made his ruling that the person had already been dead for 3 years. But the code enforcement officer bringing the case, or somebody working, because the code enforcement officer bringing the case had retired. So all of the cases are coming up from somebody and they're year-long or 2-year-long or 3-year-long fines, but the person who's responsible is not even in the room, but somebody at code enforcement knows that this is what's going on. And that's an issue, I think, that if somebody who's a developer or something wants to bring it to the attention of the city, then the person doesn't even know it's the city against that one person. And they don't even know that the person working at the city is also a developer and wants their land for something. Because I think that the north end of Calhoun, where all of those properties are being simultaneously investigated, is because somebody wants to put something there. And it's easier to put stuff there if everybody that lives there wants to just get out, or has to pay large fines, or can't put up a fence to just block the
Well, I would
backyard.
say from a real estate standpoint, that would be a really long play to make, to be like in code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
And
But no,
your
the
patch
reason-
required property is to levy people, to lien them, to take, I mean, that is
The reason at some point,
you are a
it
mastermind.
used to be all anonymous
It's hard enough
complaints.
just buying the property and putting something
Well,
on
I
it.
mean, it's not anonymous, so
It
whoever.
isn't now, but the reason it went
So-
from being anonymous to being
Is it a developer that's
supposedly-
actually doing that?
Well, they still don't. It's apparently the code enforcement officers are saying off the record that somebody told me, so I went out there and opened a case. But they're not providing, when I say specifically, I would like to see what the complaint is against this property, they say, oh, there is no complaint. It was initiated by the inspector. So the inspector is going out and picking which areas are going in front of the magistrate. And I think the magistrate should go by there, drive by and look at it more often. But they're just doing what is brought in front of them. They're not going out and initiating the cases. That's why I think that the feeling definitely among me and people I know, is that the code enforcement is not being applied equally throughout the entire city. It's being applied in areas like the area where they were going to put a multi-purpose path right by the college, right over by one of your warehouses that you store your stuff. That whole area has been cleared out because the developer wanted to put apartments there from Louisiana. And then we had somebody from Texas who wanted to put an apartment complex over near the mall, just north of there. Code enforcement was there. And it's not just the city, it's the city and the county target those areas. But if you look at the cases and you ride a couple of blocks up the street, you can see the exact same violation, and nobody's calling them on that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I
Yeah.
believe that our team is targeting
No.
specific
No.
areas. And we've had this conversation multiple times. If code enforcement is more active in a specific area, is because the neighbors in that area have drawn code enforcement's attention to those issues. Great example, where I work, we put out flags before, which are illegal in our code enforcement. Someone has called every single time. FSU put out flags. Someone has called every single time. But you can see other areas of the city where flag may sit for
Yeah,
3
you're
months.
not allowed to put a
I thought we
sign
did-
in the
I thought
public
we
right
did
of way.
away with anonymous code enforcement, so
There-
that there
it-
should be a record.
Exactly.
And who made the complaint. And
And
what I hear
that's-
Derek saying is that when asked, no record is produced that says, we know exactly who made this call. And so while we can defend that we don't think anything nefarious is going on, we can't bring forth records that say, this is why we're in this area, and,
And the reason you have to have you're supposed to not be allowed to do it anonymously is because somebody went to court and proved that it is, maybe not all the time, but
Right.
sometimes, and even if it's just one developer using that method to do it.
So it may not be a person calling on a very specific property, but there is an origination before code enforcement starts focusing on areas. And I can see this both ways. I can think of 2 or 3 neighbors. They had a person that was next to them that would not repair their house. They had animal fecal stuff all over the place. You could smell it from literally 5, 6 houses down. It was horrific. That process lasted 5 years to get that addressed. And there were fines being incurred. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines to not address what was, in my opinion, a public health issue. At the end of the day, I think was actually assessed on the property to bring it into compliance was actually only our cost. So these fines, to your point, Alan, is maybe we need to look at someone else and how they're assessed, because they never actually get assessed. So they can accumulate to hundreds of millions of dollars, I guess, if it lasted that long. But that doesn't mean the city can collect it. Everything that we actually put on the tax rolls is only our incurred costs. So if we went out and we tore down a building, we can incur that cost. Our attorney's fees, the magistrate, those are the only things that we actually can collect. But it does feel really scary to
But
some
is
people.
that what you're saying, that all of the day fines cannot be added to your tax bill?
But there's a
We've never-
process that people have to go through, and if they don't go through that process, they may very well end up paying those fees.
Yeah, or if
before
you
they
didn't
want to
know
do
that you have to go to the
Yes.
magistrate.
I'd
'Cause
like-
who knew that?
I don't think we've
Right.
ever put on, and Nevin can clarify this, I don't think we've ever put on day fines onto a tax bill. Has that ever happened?
No, it cannot happen.
So there-
Sir,
so-
can you come to the microphone?
Yeah.
Yes. I think this is the confusion, and to Alan's point, it feels very scary, but the only thing the city is actually exercising is its right to collect costs. These fines, I mean, I'm sure that there's a reason why they're there, and you'll explain.
Okay. There are usually 2 elements in a code enforcement case. One is fines, and the other is actual cost that the city has incurred.
Or fees. That's what we call them, fees. Just want to be consistent.
So a fee or a fine?
and I'm going to say this before we walked up, I can waive fines, and I do it all the time. I cannot waive fees. Fees are an expense that the city has incurred. That's the difference.
We need to improve, I'd love to have a page on the
It is,
website
it's
that talks
out
about
there.
that.
Yeah.
It's out there,
Yeah.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
but
I
the-
mean, our website is,
I promise.
Or video.
The-
I'll take it. Maybe a 20-minute
You can
video.
ask the sailboat for it.
So that we have fines,
The chat.
and then we have, I call them costs, but we can call them fees, but it's out-of-pocket expenses that the city has incurred. So those include some attorney's fees, some publishing costs, mailing costs, but then the ones that are significant are abatement costs. And those costs can be placed on the tax bill for collection. And that's what happened at the last meeting when we had the nuisance assessments. And so those individuals on their tax bill that comes out in November will see a line item for a nuisance assessment. Fines remain on the property as a lien. unless they are waived or paid. And fines are paid routinely all the time. So when a piece of property is sold, some people get title searches, and then especially developers and all, and then those fines are either paid or sometimes they petition the city manager for actually waiving the fines. Let me step back just another step. At the final hearing, when the final code enforcement lien is established, the magistrate will make a decision what fines are appropriate. And the city's position, city attorney's position is, magistrate, that's a decision between you and the applicant. We really don't take a position at all on that issue. And so often, most of the time, the fines are lowered when the applicant has a reason. There's been a death in the family, or a reason for why they could not get to the property earlier to clean it up. Once the final order is entered, if it still isn't cleaned up, then fines will start accruing again. And that's when they either would be paid or they could be waived, and the reason for waiving is very, very specific. If it's to aid in the improvement of the property, either by helping the property get sold so a person can build on it, or helping the property owner obtain financing from a bank so they can improve it, then those are good reasons to waive the fines.
I would love to see like 5 or 6 little 1-minute videos. The first one's like, so you've gotten a code enforcement letter. Here's what you should do. The second one's like, you're about to go in front of the magistrate. Here's what you should do. And it just kind of helps them along, because it's a very scary process. And if you don't know who to call, it's very nerve-wracking coming in front of the magistrate and, standing there and they're looking at you and you don't know what,
How does that video start? We're sorry you made it this far, but if you're in front of a magistrate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be, and those are videos too they're going to be relevant in 5 years and 2 years and 10 years. It's called evergreen content. So I think they're an investment in our employees' happiness, because you'll have less people that are like calling and screaming at code enforcement.
I asked Andy, the chat bot on the city's website, about code compliance, and it literally dropped me into the code compliance page, which explains every bit of this.
And I asked it, can the mayor waive its fines? And it said, I have no idea. And I asked it, can the city manager waive my fines? And it said, no idea.
Which is a better answer than yes. And then
it is,
the real
I don't
answer
know
is
is
no.
better. Yeah, but it made less assumptions. You are correct about that. But I think too, my stance.
Well, we're teaching it too, is my understanding. You have to load content in to educate it.
Sure.
And so that's the content we get from the department. I'll just add, there are, the magistrate hearing is one of the last results. There's lots of opportunities. And, if the guys are in khakis and polos, Derek could pass as a code compliance officer. It's that color turquoise. If you know some of these guys, Mike Mims, they've been working for the city for 30 years. Their family's been here 80 years. There's so many opportunities to have a conversation with code compliance to get answers long before it's a formal process. And I do. Mr. Zimmerman's team and Mr. Fuller's team bring me recommendations almost monthly on waiving fines and only assessing the fees associated with it, because the goal is to bring it to compliance. And, I understand that, when you get to that part at the end of the process with the magistrate, it can be frustrating. But I guarantee you, staff, including myself, and I would assume even the elected officials, I get way more complaints that they need code compliance to engage more and to go out and do A, B, and C 10 to 1, 20 to 1 over, oh my gosh, I've been really mistreated and this is totally unfair. I know the specific example you and I were talking about. We've explained that to this person multiple times what she needed to do, and attempted. And I know, I have to be careful. I can't just come out and say, hey, don't worry about the fines, because there is a process, and we try to explain the process. And And it does work out. Again, if someone puts forward to Mr. Fuller's team and Mr. Zimmerman's team that they've brought it into compliance, they've done what's been expected to align with our code and the expectation of the neighbors in the city, like I said, I mean, we regularly address that on a case-by-case basis, but there is a process to it.
So Derek, what are you asking specifically for this particular example of the $500,000 fees, fines, costs of the dead person's property?
Well, I think that another issue that needs to be addressed is that the only picture showed to the public showed 2 pieces of roofing metal that became a ramp to go to the door so that they wouldn't track mud in the house, and there was a bunch of colorful metal lawn art and no grass. So they couldn't get a ticket for not mowing their grass, but once the metal starts to rust, then it's no longer artwork. And the roofing metal can't be used as a ramp.
This is the $500,000
Yeah.
fee property, right?
And I don't think the tenants were ever told. Because I know when Mr. Freeman, who no longer is a code enforcement officer, came to my house, he just said, figure it out. You need to fix it or you're gonna get a ticket. And I said, what would you like me to do? He said, figure it out. And then I got his supervisor to come by and walk around and I videotaped it. Is this okay? Is that okay? And then a month later, they said, well, what we said on camera was okay is now not okay. Because you got rules like the roofing metal not being used as a ramp. The owner and probably the neighbors didn't even know about that. They didn't like the lawn art, and they could have complained about that, but it's a code violation if you're having a metal roofing material used as a ramp. You could apparently use it as a fence, but you can't use it as a ramp. And I think that, or not bagging your leaf debris. If you have so many rules that everybody's not in compliance with something, you can't have anything in your carport except a car. How many people around the city only have a car in a carport? So you can selectively
I'm
pick out
violating that.
people. So you can selectively pick out people, and then it's not a rule that means anything or is based on trying to make the world safer and trying to, if your neighbor's flooding your property, you should be able to complain, this is actually doing physical damage to my property. Yeah. And they say, well, we can't do anything about that, but you got to figure out what you have to fix on your property and do it, or your neighbor has to take care of their grass and keep it mowed. Meanwhile, somebody's actually doing physical damage to the neighborhood.
Yeah, the interesting thing about if we, my wife even the other day said about code enforcement, because I get people call me and say, you should report this to code enforcement. I'm like, oh no, you should report to code enforcement because then I'm going to look like the bad guy. And my wife was like, code enforcement needs to go after more people. And I said, well, it's actually an opportunity for the neighborhood to decide on what they allow their neighbors.
They set the standard.
They set the standard. So you can say, okay, you want our neighborhood, and you saw that in Briarcliff. They were like, okay, there's this pushback of like, we want RVs in our front yard. And it's like, all right, well, if you want RVs in your front yard, you guys can have RVs in your front yard. And so it is an opportunity. And then there's all these sort of little things that the metric of failure, grass is easy. It's like, because you can measure it. You're like, no, that's 4 inches of grass. But clutter and just junk. Some persons, I love junk. I got a warehouse of junk. One man's trash, another man's treasure, that kind of saying. And so what we want to avoid is rats, and you see that like stray cats living in cars that are abandoned in someone's front yard.
Cats that you can't.
Yeah, if you have a collage of bicycles piled up to the tree that nobody can see from the road, and code enforcement comes into your backyard and says, you can't put up a fence to keep me out of your backyard, and I see that because I'm in your backyard. And meanwhile, across the street, they're literally flooding the neighborhood, and code enforcement says that's not anything we're going to do anything about, but you have to do this, and you can't put up a fence, and you got to, but across the street, nothing.
Sure. The flooding thing I did research. That was one of the first things I researched for Derek, and it's tough. It turns into a civil thing, and Mr. Zimmerman can always correct me, but the only way we can regulate the ability of like, you brought in too much dirt, therefore you flooded someone's property, is if we do like before and after topos on everyone's property and monitor the soil levels, which would be like, you want to really raise taxes? Force us to do before and after conditions on everyone's property every year. And that's what it would take to be able to say, oh, you brought in a wheelbarrow of dirt, now you're flooding the person's property.
Or you set
a civil issue.
a plan moving forward, you have an actual plan, and part of that plan is that you address the runoff, and you make it a violation if you block the flow of runoff and somebody can show a case-by-case basis.
You have to be able to show,
are
you have to be able
doing
to
this.
prove the before condition, which is, that's the, and then monitor it to see who actually did it, because, I mean, unless it's in a building permit that shows, oh, I raised it, you could say, I never put that dirt there, I didn't let that thing, and then it turns into, you know, so if you really
and
want to
if-
get muddied up with government, is have us start doing before and after conditions with everyone's property.
But if you
So
don't
we-
write stuff down,
Yeah.
then after a year or two, then nobody knows what happened except for the
Yeah.
people that live there.
That's
I
true.
think just please address the day fines, because to have super ridiculously high day fines, that the person who's a teacher, one of these people is a teacher, and is already putting their house in jeopardy to take care of their aunt's house, and they were in, you know, medical issues, whatever, but that person doesn't have that money, so this is no longer about fixing the neighborhood. This is about saying you're already in a situation where you don't have the money to address this,
Yeah.
and now we're gonna take away your house, and we're probably gonna take away, we're taking away your aunt's house, but we're probably gonna put a lien on your house to pay
Yeah.
off the day fines.
One thing that we need
Just
to
say that.
fix as just an organization, and I don't know how to fix it, is we have caring citizens who come here on the behalf of someone else who's not speaking up. And that makes it really hard for us when it's someone else. I'm here because someone else isn't here, and I'm mad because they're not. And then I always say, like, why aren't they coming to us and talking to
Or
us?
at least send an email.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because it's weird being yelled at on the behalf of someone else who isn't voicing their own concerns. So I always go like, well, do they really have a concern if they're not going to even call me or email me? Like, why? I mean, and so it's like, I don't know how to fix that, where it's just like, if they have problems, send them to us so we can discuss their problems, Derek, not your problems that you think you're solving for them on their behalf. That's just so much easier to send a citizen to
You know,
us.
when code enforcement's at your door saying that you're gonna pay serious fines unless
Yeah.
you figure it out and fix it, and then won't tell you what they want you to do.
Yeah, it's also hard to go back in time. I would love to have a time machine. But a lot of the problems that get brought to me are like, 10 years ago, and I'm like, I can't even fix that.
But moving
But to
forward,
Derek's point,
if you
when code
cap
enforcement is
it-
at the door and someone is already scared,
Yeah.
they're not sure that coming before us is going to help them.
Yeah.
Because it may be more backlash, because they already feel targeted.
Totally.
Or it spends 12
Yeah.
years and you still don't get it fixed.
Totally.
Yeah.
So cap it at
Yeah.
the cost of the abatement. Or if it exceeds 10% of the cost of the abatement, you gotta put a freeze
Yeah.
on that and figure out some way to address it, because
Yeah. Is something like that doable, Jonathan, Nevin, what he
Yeah,
just suggested?
I'd have to defer. I know state law drives a lot of this,
Yeah.
and also some of our ordinances, so I would have to look into that and address it. But, you know, I'm not, the specifics of all this, what I have found is that, you know, it often sounds daunting, and when you go and ask staff questions, they're like, oh, yeah, no, da-da-da-da-da. And so,
Right.
happy to type up a formal memo in this particular issue to try to put it to
Let's do
rest.
that.
I think, you know, you get up and you start throwing numbers and years and all that. I mean, one point that I failed, jumping back to the Maslina complex, I didn't think about too, one of the reasons why, and it's actually, I think, more like 12 acres, because I was talking to the mayor, the parcels we purchased on the west, I don't think have been, they're separate.
Yeah, they're
So,
separate.
like as far
There's
as the
like another
property
acre and a half,
appraiser.
yeah.
But all the fueling operations are there. So we already have diesel tank and regular unleaded fuel tank in the ground. And that's where already the utility guys come there every day or every few days to get fuel. All the police department vehicles, I think most of the fire department vehicles, all get fuel there. And so,
Well, let's call
yeah,
a neighborhood
so-
meeting. Macedonia would probably host it.
Well,
And,
I don't even, I mean, Sean may come to me and be like, hey, Jonathan, we kind of just measured everything, and it's just going to have to be the way it was with just Public Works, absent utilities, and PCR, that's it. And so at that point, I wouldn't even have flagged it, because I don't know that I would even bring something up for a public meeting if internal review is like, yeah, it's just not feasible.
Well, let's let these
Yeah.
neighbors know,
Yeah. So,
because there's a lot already going on
yeah.
over there. All right.
Well, I'll address it in the morning, or Monday morning with the manager. So, and
Thank
we
you.
have done a lot of these videos about like the loose leaves and grass and how you're supposed to do that. multiple videos about that, and it's out there, so.
But when we look at the metrics and we look at the number of residents who need the information, there's a delta. A lot of people, we're putting that information
I
out
know.
there, but the people who need it don't always get it because they just got a problem they're trying to solve today.
That's right, so.
So
What else should we discuss today?
I'm out of here, guys.
All right. What do we, you want any discussion about anything else?
We're having a celebration over at the Lady Harris for Glenwood Marketplace.
I love it.
Stay dry.
It's gonna be rainy today. You need a discussion from us on anything?
No, I mean, I think the big thing is, you know,
A
the
little review on Jonathan real quick?
formally standing up the cemetery board. I think you're re-engaging with that. That's kind of some of my notes here.
I think we should, as part of that, kind of go over what their roles and responsibilities should be.
Yeah.
For the
Not
cemetery
right this
board?
second, I'm just saying.
Make it
as part of
sustainable.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That should be number one priority.
Well, I told Virgil when we met, I said the best way to get anything done with any busy organization, whether it's government or a business, is to bring them the solution on a platter and be like, all you need to do is say yes to this. And that just makes it easy because, you know, for any busy organization, when a new problem hits, it goes, okay, what do we have to, either the staff has to work more hours or we have to stop doing something. And so just,
I mean, one thing I'd like, and we've kind of talked about this, I can't remember, it was one of the three of you, I can't, or maybe it was one of the other senior staff, but I want to think too, I also, you know, I'd like us to not always have the initial reaction be government needs to be the one to do it. I mean, my mom is laid to rest at Greenwood Cemetery along with my dad's parents and my great uncle and great aunt. And me and my boys and my brother-in-law, we go out there, you know, every couple of months, and we don't just mow her lot. We do like a giant area around it just to like contribute back to our community. And so I think if everybody just did a little bit, you know, I don't know, that's the kind of community I want to be in. And we try to, you know, kind of pay your civic rent a little bit and help chip in and, you know, so.
it's true.
So, and, you know, my dad had right-of-way space outside of his fence, but city hadn't mowed that in 45 years. You know, we just take the mower out there really quick and mow the right-of-way that's outside of his fence, and I just happy to do that. I mean, it's just, I mean, you'd have to have, I mean, you guys have seen some of the reports on some of the things. I mean, we'd have to have, our team of 30 would need to be 120 to, you know, mow every right-of-way in the city, especially during the growing season. So I'm not saying we don't have a role as government, but I think sometimes, you know, like, well, what's the government gonna do to fix it? Well, I don't know that we're always the best ones to fix certain things. So that's kind of my thought.
The expectation of government, I was thinking about that, just like how far we've gone in 250 years. The expectation now is so incredibly high. Even when, you know, our parents were in schools, it was a totally different environment of the buildings and the classrooms. And in this job, you get such a spectrum of opinions on what we should be doing. That's the most interesting part, especially the far ends of the spectrum of you guys shouldn't even exist. You have the anarchists,
Yes.
and then you have like you should be fixing everything and doing everything for like splash pads and pools and all the things, and I love all those things, and then they're always very adamant, and it's always like, well, you know, I just talked to someone yesterday. You should go talk to that person because they're going to completely disagree with you on what we should be doing. And so it is really interesting because you don't get that, you don't get as much of that in business. You know, we get like, you should do pizzas and you should do, but not like when you have a restaurant, they don't tell you you should open up something else.
Or that you shouldn't exist.
Or you shouldn't exist at all. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's an interesting job, the feedback that you get and the spectrum of it. So, but I do agree that this organization is very busy working on the problems that we see right in front of us, and adding more problems to it. It doesn't speed us up, and I don't, unless we hired more staff or stop doing other things, which it can always be a discussion of other things we should stop doing that we should be doing.
What's really, so yesterday and the day before, I was at a state meeting with several electeds from every county in the state, and one of the things everybody's talking about right now, you know, and you know how we got to where we're at, and now there's this like protraction of local government, national government, state government to an extent, but you know, I mean, it used to be that parents would raise their kids. They didn't expect, hey, I'm sending my kid off to you, and send them back to me once they know what they're supposed to know and do what they're supposed to do. There was a point in time where cemeteries were taken care of by churches. There was a point in time where parks were just something that the group of people like Cove has got a great example. Why are there so many parks in the Cove? Well, because of the Cove, when it platted it, they all decided they want to have that many parks, and they were originally taking care of them. So I think we have to ask the question also of what do we want as a community? Do we want a community that government takes care of all of us, or do we want to take care of each other? And my hope is that we, at our core, want to take care of each other versus having some nameless, faceless entity that can charge us $300,000 in code enforcement fines, or some type of clumsy organization that hey, it's so big that no one really can oversee it or have input to it because it's just so big. I would hope that we would choose the former.
Yeah, even within the past 100 years in Panama City, we were a dirt road community that used sawdust for the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's even like I get pothole complaints. You're like, yeah, we didn't have roads. So the expectation.
Nobody cut the grass.
Yeah, there was no sidewalks, and now it's like so. It is
wild.
the responsibility that we have keeps growing, and therefore government keeps growing too, and the taxes keep growing. And I don't know what the best way to tackle all these
I
problems.
think at some point in time you got to make a decision of what your priorities are,
Yeah.
and then start from there. It's the whole adage of big rocks first, and then the small ones. A government can do a lot of things that's really good, but if it tries to do everything, it will fail, just like any other organization or your household or anything. You can't do everything. You are not meant to do that. There is no organization on the planet that can do that.
Yeah, I mean, even land development code wasn't even a thing until probably in the 70s or 80s. It was just build whatever you want to, wherever you want to, and
Well, like you said, there's extremes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just build whatever you want to. And I mean, the paper mill's a great example of like, yeah, we're just going to go do this. And nothing works more efficient than a dictatorship. And then when the government just does whatever they want to, it's just so much faster. And so the more layers of collaboration and checks and balances and OSHA and DEP and building permits, land development, it just slows everything down, which is also good. But it does. It's slow. We as an organization has slowed down because of the processes and things, and good processes.
I was talking to someone yesterday, and I think it was Wednesday. I was walking downtown to just go check out some things, and some guy came up to me. I have no idea who he was, and he goes, "Hey, I know you don't know who I am, but I know who you are. I just want to let you know, appreciate everything that you guys are doing. I know you probably don't ever hear that, and we sat there and visited for a couple of minutes."
Did he say anything nice about me?
No, only about Commissioner Granger. No, just kidding. You owe me $20 now. No, and we chatted, and it just kind of I've been back home and working for the city now for about 5 years, but I've been involved in government and politics for over 20 years now, and I'll tell you the problem is that most of the people that are frustrated, those are the ones that will reach out. But people wake up, or people have this realization, oh, I'm frustrated at this, I'm gonna let my government know. But rarely do people, oh, I'm actually happy that I got to do A, B, and C today or something, So I know it's hard, to get discouraged in these positions. And I tell you, local stuff is even more tough than the DC stuff because it's right here. It's our home. It's our community.
Well, and communication, even 40 years ago, was there was no you got to live stream your events on Facebook and YouTube and all the things. It was literally put the notice in the paper. Everyone reads the paper. They'll be informed.
I'm sure there was no neighborhood meeting regarding the mill.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
They were just 8 o'clock meeting. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Boom, it was done.
Yeah.
Well, we don't actually have that requirement to live stream. We do it because we choose to.
I think it's good, but the expectation again of oh, I only get my news from TikTok, therefore you should. Right now, even just communicating as a city is 5 different platforms, and this video and this story and this thing and this tag, and it used to be just put the article in the paper, and or the radio station, and then you're good.
And the fact that we have to have a singular person at the city that makes sure that it all meets federal guidelines, and it's an entire thing, even with the videos. Some people can
ADA, all that stuff.
Website ADA
video.
compliance.
We can't. We've got to go through this whole long list of things. Otherwise, we get sued. So, I mean, it's crazy.
I think it's
So-
why some smaller cities just choose not even do it, because it's kind of like when I first got into this office, I asked the question, how come everything that we had in City Hall wasn't digitized? Because I was in the Air Force when the Air Force went from paper to digital, and some of that was kind of rough, but we eventually got there. And here in 2023, I'm like, why do we still have paper in the city? Like, why is this still a thing?
Robbie would ask why we have copiers.
Yeah, and so, well, I found out that some of the old PDFs that we had, they're not searchable, and so since they're not searchable, if you put those out on the website, you can literally get sued because they're not searchable. So you have to then make them searchable. You have to make everything searchable. And it's this huge financial burden because they had gone out to talk to a company, and the company was like, yeah, that's like $180,000 to do that. And it's like, well, I mean, we have the document. If somebody wants to see it, it's a public record still, but to just go that extra mile is $180,000. So the answer was just to, as things progressed, to just do it, right, through attrition. And it's just sometimes you get into those weird situations where it's like you want to do the right thing, but man, it's so expensive. Or you have to meet these extra requirements now.
Websites weren't a thing 30 years ago.
Yeah, right? Like it's. But yeah, but similarly, there's people who will go around to different hotels in the state of Florida and sue them when they don't have a ADA accessible way to enter the pool, right? And that's,
50K a pop?
Yeah.
Oh, a buddy of mine, if you Google Satchel's Pizza in Gainesville, Florida, got sued because his website wasn't colorblind friendly. And it was
But he won, didn't he?
He won. He fought it because he's like, I didn't even get a notice that I was doing anything bad. So you at least give me a notice before you just go off and sue me. But the woman was using an attorney who just goes around suing restaurants for their websites, and just had randomly picked some websites and just decided to sue them. And he did. He fought it and won.
I saw on a reel the other day where an artist, I don't know, this guy, he was doing some kind of reviews or something on Zillow, and he was using content from Zillow in his content, and the photographer who'd taken pictures of the houses had teamed up with a lawyer and was basically suing absolutely everybody who used Zillow content just to settle. Like, they knew they weren't going to win. But if you sue 30,000 people, you're gonna if 10% of them settle with you, man, you're making money big time.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it's just that's the kind of stuff that we as a city wind up dealing with. A lot of people don't know about it because it winds up in Nevin's office or whatever. But it's that's the kind of stuff people don't have to think about, right? When they get in their car, they go to work, go to the grocery store, come back home, turn on the tap, water comes out, flush the toilet, it goes away. That's where I look at, that's my job, is to make sure that they don't have to interact with the city, right? That's where I want us to be, where they don't have to. If they want to, that's different. But for them to reach out and be like, hey, my toilet's backing up, or hey, my water's not flowing, or hey, my ditch, is now completely full. That's the kind of stuff that where I would like for us to be, is where they just don't have to reach out to us at all.
I know that a lot of people don't want to hear it, but I mean, the reality is government has to do less. It's so complex that all of these things compound until, it would take us 20 years to fully understand everything that's going on in this. Jonathan's he does it full time every single day. And I'm sure he doesn't know everything that's going on
he does.
of the city.
He knows everything.
So
I'd like to see us, I think there are so many helpers in general, and I actually made a little video, so you comment on it, but going beyond even nonprofits, I'd love to see us move to a place of, when inclement weather like today is happening, that we are putting out a video a day in advance that says, rain is coming, we would like you to look at your storm drain outside your house, and if there's stuff in there, just take a shovel and clean it out for us. Or if it's really bad, give us a call. But like, I think really citizens are looking for like, hey, I know you guys can't do anything, but like, I do want to help. Like, I'm not going to repave the roads for you, but like, if I can do this, or if I have permission, I also love, there's a few houses in St. Andrews. There's one by Kramer Chevrolet that has a garden all the way out to the road.
Oh, yeah, Miss Genoway.
Yep. And then there's another woman on Beck who has like she has like this. They have this beautiful home, and they've taken over the right of way kind of by the road. And it's all landscaped and beautiful, and you can see people who have taken and put trees out, and I think people just. There was actually a story, a video I saw from Tucson, Arizona, where this guy had gone and taken, and I sent it to Stacy, but he like. Rebellious, like he like cut his road and put like bioswales in it and like a rain garden and put trees there. Then the whole neighborhood's doing it now, and it's become a city standard. And I love the idea that citizens just don't know what they're allowed to do, or I'm not gonna get in trouble for doing this thing. And but the storm drains is an easy one. I think there are other things too that we could just encourage through just communications of like, hey, check out the storm drain. Pick up some trash. We don't have. It's funny getting an email from people like, there's trash here. I'm like, we don't have trash sensors. There's no trash monitoring system.
Some people may think there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah,
that we just know.
yeah. So we either are driving by, picking up, or someone has to report it. But you're also welcome to pick up your own trash. I had a woman walking down, and I hope she's not watching this, but this woman walking down Beach Drive, sending me a photo of every dead fish on the shore. And I said, we don't have like a dead fish patrol, but I promise since the beginning of time, dead fish have been hitting that shore and washing back out, and something.
Vulture houses, that's what's coming
Vulture
next.
houses. I'm like, after like the 8th email, I was like, I don't have a.
Is that a real thing? Okay.
Buzzard boxes.
Yes,
Buzzard
now we're
boxes,
talking.
vulture houses.
So yeah, it's just also you're welcome to pick up the dead fish yourself too. We don't have a dead fish pickup crew, so it really is. It kind of bumps into responsibility of government, and also the sort of the middle ground of where we meet and how to collaborate at that middle ground. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, well, you can lead the way and set policies, like hurricane season coming up, and you need to streamline your process. You don't have the big landfill to put stuff in. If you went in and instead of going into low-lying areas with heavy machinery, if you just chop the branches off the tree and drag the main part of the tree and leave stuff or mulch things, or communicate to the public on such and such day at the beginning of this, if you separate out all the cables, we'll come by and pick those up, and then we'll come by and pick, but if you just pile everything into one big thing, then you're gonna have to wait, and we'll do that last.
Yeah.
But if you have something where they can take their stuff that can be composted, separate it, and then have different crews doing different things.
Yeah.
And communicate with the people, say, hey, in the east side of the city, if you're not gonna have your stuff picked up, you can't just pile it at the street. Or if you have central locations that you can dump stuff, you can't have only contractors being allowed to dump there. So if you could communicate with the public that there is a plan and streamline it, I think that would be very helpful, because without a plan, you're not going to achieve your goals.
Yeah, there's nothing
we're all stuck.
more disheartening to me when a citizen is under good intentions doing something good, like cleaning up their yard or something, and they have construction debris mixed in with lawn, and we don't pick it up, and they're like, well, why are they picking the thing up? And we're like, well, because we don't. And they're like, I just didn't know that you had to separate these things out. And so a lot of it is us, in business, you're always trying to train your customers to be the best version of themselves for them, so they have a better experience at your establishment, but also for you too. And so I think I'd love to see a video that goes out. I told this to Jonathan, like every time a hurricane comes, which is like what the city does. It doesn't be a new video. It's just like, hey, inclement weather's coming. Here's what we do as a city to prepare for this. We look at these things. We pick up this stuff. We lower the ponds. We do all these kind of things so that citizens know that a problem is coming. We're tracking it. And then here's how you can help. You could do these. If you have lawn things that are going to pick up and go into the air, your trampolines, fix your trampolines, like letting them know that they have a responsibility too, not just us, to prepare for things. So I do agree with that. So, and then it makes you feel like a community.
What a novel concept.
What a crazy idea. Anything else to discuss? We have, yeah, tell us a story.
Oh, there's not a story.
Yes, it is.
It'll turn into a story.
You didn't ask how long the city owned the mill site. I'll let you know later.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
fascinating. Anything else?
Just a reminder, Monday's virtual workshop, we'll have a report from Red Speed on some of the data, with that kicking off Monday, August 10th. And we're also going to talk a little bit about strong towns.
Yeah.
I did connected with Urban 3 and expect a proposal any day now on kind of coming and looking at some of our data. So.
And as we wrap, wishing Robbie good luck and best health in Jacksonville as he's handling his stuff. And he's on a good track. We're excited for him. I texted him this morning, so he's on a good path.
Awesome.
And if that's it, we're meeting adjourned. Appreciate everyone for coming.